I'm telling this now in desperate fear. My girlfriend is busy in the kitchen right now. And she's the one I'm most afraid of right now. And things started out really well. I'm in college, I'm 19 years old. You can say that I don't get much attention from women because I'm not handsome, and besides, I have a lot of complexes. In general, girls never paid attention to me, and I was sure that I would remain a loner for the rest of my life. But I was wrong. In the fall, after class, I had to go to the store to buy my little brother a birthday present. I stopped at the toy counter and began to think about which toy to choose. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a beautiful girl in her 20s standing nearby. She was so beautiful that I looked at her and couldn't take my eyes off her. Suddenly she looked at me and smiled. I couldn't believe it at first. She smiled? To me? Like an idiot, I kept looking at her. Learning from bitter experience and disappointed with myself, I didn't even think to go up to her and meet her. She couldn't be mine. She just couldn't be. After coming to my senses and realizing that there was no way I could have a girlfriend, I continued to pick out a toy for my brother. Suddenly she came closer to me and quietly said,
"Excuse me, can I meet you?"
"Oh my God, this is crazy. This can't be happening." Such ridiculous thoughts ran through my head at that moment. And then everything went great. I was surprised at how well everything was going. We went to the movies, went for walks, enjoyed life. I was happy. My friends, and I don't have many of them, when they found out that I had such a girl, were very surprised and didn't believe me. I didn't believe myself either. It had been about a month since we'd met. My girlfriend Catherine and I were renting an apartment in an old building. Everything was fine, except that I gradually began to drift away from happiness and began to look at the world more realistically. And I noticed some oddities in her behavior. For one thing, she had no friends or girlfriends. And she was a little shy of people. Secondly, she told almost nothing about herself. She only said that she was an orphan and came to work from a small town. She also said she worked at a store with a name I'd never heard before. Anyway, it was weird. But whatever. The important thing is that I love her and that she loves me. That's what I thought at the time. But the further it went, the more interesting it got. I began to notice that Catherine was getting better and better every day. I even started joking that she had magic makeup. And she just smiled back. One evening, when I got home, I noticed Catherine standing in front of the mirror. I wanted to hug her. When I approached her and put my hands on her shoulders, I involuntarily looked in the mirror and recoiled in horror. Instead of my beauty, the mirror reflected an old and ugly old woman. Catherine was very surprised at my behavior, looked at me and asked if everything was all right. I looked in the mirror again and, not seeing the old woman's reflection, said that everything was fine, I was just tired. After that I couldn't come to my senses for a long time. What I had seen excited me, and at night I could not sleep. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't sleep a wink. Catherine was lying next to me, as if she had been asleep for a long time. I was still lying on my side with my eyes closed, trying to sleep, when suddenly I felt Catherine get out of bed. I thought she was going to the bathroom, what's the big deal? But about 3 minutes passed and I still didn't hear the sound of the bathroom door opening. So I opened my eyes. My girlfriend was standing on the floor and moving her head in some unnatural way. I admit I was stunned and afraid to call out to her, watching silently. She stood like that for another 3 minutes and then literally fell back on the bed. I was stunned and couldn't sleep until morning. Sitting in class, I tried to analyze everything that had happened to me over the past month, began to remember the strange looks people threw at Catherine when we walked around the city. I especially remembered the time when a gypsy woman ran up to me and offered to read my fortune. I was basically interested, but Catherine said in a firm voice,
"Thank you, no need, we're in a hurry."
We weren't in a hurry to get anywhere, though. I remember how frightened the gypsy looked at Catherine. But I didn't notice it then. I was over the moon. It's only now that I'm thinking about it. After the first class, I was so sleepy that I went straight home. Catherine wasn't home, she must have gone to work. But who knows? I wasn't sure of anything. When I got to my bed, I laid down and fell asleep immediately. When I woke up, I felt a slight pain in my head. But now more or less sober thoughts began to come to me. Yesterday's day and night seemed like a nightmare, and I began to assure myself that the old woman I had seen in the mirror was a figment of my imagination. And what I saw at night was just my girlfriend sleepwalking. Nothing mystical about it. To be sure, I decided to rummage through my girlfriend's nightstand. My conscience told me not to do that, but I needed to reassure myself about Catherine. Alas, I found nothing reassuring. No photos, no paperwork. When she came home, I realized that I was beginning to fear her. I avoided looking at her, touching her, talking to her. I didn't dare to ask the questions that were bothering me at that moment. I said I was sick and stayed in bed all evening. The night, thank God, went normally, without mysticism. But I decided to find the gypsy woman who had offered me divination that day. After class, I went to the underpass where this woman had been last time. Good or bad, I don't know, but the gypsy woman was there. For some reason I was afraid to ask her about Catherine. Maybe afraid to learn the bitter truth. But as I approached the gypsy woman, my heart beat harder and harder. I came close to her, but the words wouldn't come out of my mouth. The gypsy looked at me curiously, trying to remember. When I asked her if she remembered my girlfriend, the gypsy changed her face and began to chirp something rapidly in a language I did not understand. The language almost made me vomit, so I stopped her. Enough. Please tell me, what is wrong with my girlfriend? Her answer shocked me. It was nonsense. Pure nonsense. The gypsy was crazy. Without listening to her, I quickly walked away from the place. She told me the following. My girlfriend is a witch. A devourer. Of people. Their souls. She looks like a girl, but she's actually 93 years old. The more souls she eats, I wonder how she eats them, the younger she gets. After these words, I decided to go to the church to put a candle for Catherine. When I managed to do that, I went home, even though I didn't want to. But I had no choice. When I got home, I laughed at the gypsy woman's words. I should have thought of such nonsense. But on the other hand, some part of my subconscious must have believed her words, because I was even more afraid. When I got home, Catherine started asking how I was feeling, if I had recovered, etc. I replied that I was fine and she needn't worry. I went to bed early that day as I really wanted to get some sleep after another crazy day. Catherine, on the other hand, was still busy in the kitchen. I was asleep, dreaming vague dreams, when suddenly something made me wake up. When I opened my eyes, I almost died of fright. Catherine was lying flush with me, her eyes were open, and she was smiling strangely. She's smiling? In the middle of the night? To me? Like an idiot, I continued to stare at her in horror. I was still in a state of shock when she said,
"Why did you put a candle for me in the temple?"
Despite her frozen smile, her eyes were full of hatred. Paralyzed with fear, I lay looking at her for a long time. She closed her eyes and just fell asleep. I didn't go to college in the morning, of course, but she stayed home for some reason and did something in the kitchen. I'm scared. Please, friends, help me. What should I do? I'm asking for your advice.